What's good, everyone? Welcome to the YouTube channel. I've got a smile on my face because I've wanted to say that for quite some time now. As you can see, I've posted videos on this account, but it's just old compilations of games, and this is my first proper video, and I've really wanted to do this for quite some time. Like I said, I think this will be a good opportunity for me to speak a bit more in depth in the academy and kind of what's going on and the games and things like that. And I want this to be a regular thing. I want it to be something that's quite chill. As you can see, the background that I've got here, the setup, I want it to be something that you can put on when you're going to work or if you're studying or something like that. Just something chill. So yeah, what a better place to start my first video than a 6-0 win versus Forest on the weekend for the under-18s. We're going to go through the starting lineup, my thoughts on that, the goals, and some of my main takeaways from the game, and looking at some of the players that stood out for me. Let's have a look at the starting 11. So when I saw this team before the game started, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is just unfair. To have this strength and depth at this level is pretty insane, and it's not something that I've seen before. At least since I've started properly watching the academy, this strength and depth is just ridiculous. To have Chido up front and then Lacey at right wing and then Scanlon at left wing, and to have potentially on another day Biancheri up front, Mentato at right wing and Lucille at left wing, it's crazy. This is an Academy Galactico squad. Even if you look at the midfield, there's no Jack Fletcher, there's no Zach Bauman, there's no Devaney, and even you could put someone like Fitzgerald in there as well, obviously, right? He's starting at right back, but he could be playing midfield as well. So if you just factor in the number of players that are missing here and the lineup that we put out and how good that team is, it just puts into context how good the squad is. And it's at a point now where I think we could realistically put out any 11 and beat pretty much every team in the league, home and away. And obviously that's not just down to the players. You've got to give credit to the management as well. I think Adam Lawrence has the team set up so well that it doesn't really matter who's playing, because the system and the style of play and sort of like the principles of the team is so sort of deep rooted into the players, because essentially every weekend that you watch the under-18s, you know what you're getting. You know how they're going to play, you know how they're going to build out from the back, you know how they're going to press, you know that the fullbacks are going to be overlapping the wingers, all these sort of things. They're core principles of the team, and it doesn't matter so much then when you remove those individuals out of the team. It's just this idea that the team can survive without the individuals because the system is set up so well. Look at the team that beat Chelsea in the national final last season. The only player that started in that game that played yesterday is James Scanlon. The rest of the team is entirely different. So you take away all of those players that had key roles in that treble-winning season, they're all gone. And still, we are just battering everyone every weekend. And it's sort of a formality now. And I can't see that changing anytime soon, really, especially if Chido continues to play. I don't suspect that he'll stay with the under-18s for much longer. He didn't have a pre-season, so he's going to take a couple of games at that level to sort of get up to speed. And once I think he gets to that point, he'll start playing for the 21s. But let's talk about him, because obviously it was his first start. He made his debut last week against Sunderland, didn't score, played about 20 or 30 minutes. Obviously the game wasn't on MUTV, so I couldn't see how he got on, but this was his first start, and you could tell the hype was ridiculous. Everyone on the timeline was watching, and yeah, not a bad start. So the first goal, right? 10 seconds in, presses the centre-back, wins the ball, lovely finish, composed, calm. That's Chido in a nutshell, right? I saw something on Twitter that I thought was really interesting, and I kind of agree with it. So it's basically this idea that he's got this Haaland-esque presence about him when he's pressing the centre-backs. So because of his frame and how imposing he is on the pitch, the centre-backs are put into situations where they've got enough time on the ball and they're not really under pressure, but because Chido's there, because, like I said, because of his presence, they're sort of panicking a little bit and they're overthinking things. You get put in scenarios then when, like I said, the defenders make rash decisions and they're sort of not focusing on the game in front of them, and rather they're focusing on Chido. And because of that, you get chances. And we saw that play out exactly how we see Haaland do for City, right? Where he nicks it from the defender, gets through on goal, and he's finishing. And that's one thing that stood out for me yesterday. And of course, looking back at Chido's clips from last season for Arsenal, the guy scored 32 goals. And there's this kind of inevitability when he gets put through on goal that he's going to finish it and he's going to pick the right finish. There's a video that came out quite recently from, I don't know who got it or where it's come from, but there was a training video of Chido in kind of one-on-one situations, and he just seems to pick the right finish for every situation. And I've noticed that he's not usually smashing the ball into the net. He's usually picking the corners or putting it through the keeper's legs or just clever finishes. And that is a sign of a really good striker, that they don't feel the need to smash the ball in the net or take the shot quickly. They're always trying to sort of create the best angle or the best opportunity for them to score. And that's something that we saw yesterday, right? One moment that stood out for me, and now that I think about it, which was quite funny, was after he'd scored his hat-trick, there was a moment where he was put through on goal and he probably could have passed it, but he went for the shot and went for his fourth goal and smashed it over the bar. And you could see that some of his teammates weren't too happy with him. And after that moment then, you didn't really see him take many shots, and he was actually in scenarios where he probably should have, but I kind of think that he felt that he'd got the third goal, and maybe he felt he was being too selfish on that other opportunity. So the rest of the half then that he played, obviously he was taken off at half time. The rest of the half, he wasn't really looking to score. He was trying to set up his teammates because the game was already won at that point, right? One thing that I did want to touch on is sort of this situation around his goal scoring record and how good he is at under 18s football, and that once he steps up to under 21s football, he's not going to be able to replicate that. Obviously, it's too early to say that, but I do like to reference sometimes someone like Charlie McNeil. He was someone that came into under 18s football with a reputation of being an incredible goal scorer. I think in his first season for United, he scored around 22 or 23 goals, and there was a lot of hype around his name, and he just didn't quite replicate that goal scoring form at 21s football. I've seen a few people say that that's kind of something that might happen to Chido. Whilst every player is different and we can't say for certain, one thing that Chido has that Charlie didn't is that physicality. You know, Chido's 6'4" at 16. Once he moves up to that next level of football at under 21s, I think he'll have more tools to be able to adapt more effectively to that level of football and that physicality that we're talking about. So Chido was the popular option for man of the match, right? I mean, 3 goals in 45 minutes. Be hard to top that, but someone who I thought had an equally good game was Jim Thwaites. So Thwaites made his under 18s and 21s debut last season at 16. He's still 16 now. And he's someone that actually had quite a key role to play in the title-winning season. Now, the under 18s ended up walking the title in the end, but he had 2 moments during the course of the season that I think had a bit of a ripple effect on the course of the season as a whole. I think it was the first 10 games, he won a penalty on his debut in the last minute, and we ended up winning that game and keeping that unbeaten run going. And then I think towards the midway end, or sort of the end of the season, there was that incredible goal versus Derby with his left foot, his weaker foot, in the last minute to draw the game. And those are 2 games where, because of his involvement, I think that kept the team morale up and it kept that unbeaten run going. He's really someone that I think is going to have a big role to play in the under-18s team this season. He's got 4 GA in his last 5 games. He scored a winner 2 weekends ago against Sunderland with about 5 minutes to go. So he's starting to have that influence. And like I said, he had those 2 moments last season that I think had a knock-on effect on the season as a whole. But ultimately last season, he was a bit of a bit part player because of his age, right? He spent most of the time in the under-16s age group. But he's someone that I really like the look of. He's someone that you can watch for 10, 15 minutes and get a really good idea of what he brings to the table and what he's good at. And on the weekend, I think that probably would have been a lot of people's first time watching him, because there was a lot of people on the weekend that were coming to watch Chido for the first time, and people that don't generally tend to watch the academy. And a lot of people came away from that game looking at Thwaites as someone that they thought, wow, this guy looks really good. And I agree, he's got a really, really interesting profile. His shooting technique off both feet is insane. I think it's the best in the academy. From what I can see from under 18s to 21s, he's got the best shooting technique. He can score any type of goal off both feet, and he's got a really, really clean technique. He's really press resistant. He's got a low centre of gravity. He can turn really quickly. He can carry the ball. He's got a nice pass selection. He's quite deft with his sort of through balls and those neat little passes that you can play around the box. He's tenacious. He's got a good engine. So he's really, really a modern day midfielder, and he's someone that I really like to look at, and someone that I think is going to have a big influence on their under 18s team this season. Whilst I'm singing his praises, I do think that I need to try and help manage expectations, because I've got a big channel now that covers the academy, and I think that doing that side of things is equally as important as giving praise to the players, because I think what tends to happen is people come away from watching that game and seeing how well he played, and then assume that he should be playing first team football, or that he should be pushed up to the age groups and fast tracked into the first team. And it's something that Nick Cox talks a lot about. When it comes to players that young and players that are in the under 18s age group, it's not necessarily how good they are. It's also factoring in the experiences that they need to go through before they reach the first team. It takes a long time for a player to get from under 18s to first team. There's a lot of things that go under the radar that people don't quite appreciate. I think a really good example of what I'm trying to talk about is Kobbie Mainoo. So this is someone, guys, that is, arguably a generational talent for a midfielder in terms of what he's been able to achieve at his age, and how good he is at the moment, and how seamlessly that he's come from academy football into first team football, right? This is a very, very rare talent, right? And still, the things that I'm talking about apply to someone as good as Mainoo. So this is something that Nick Cox said about Kobbie Mainoo. Part of preparing Kobbie was to show him as many experiences that looked a little bit like the first team. So that's how you build resilience. And he's right. So specifically talking about Mainoo and those experiences that he's mentioning, you've got the FA Youth Cup run. So playing at Old Trafford and having those fans increase every game, and the pressure to perform in those games increasing every game. You had the away game at Reading, so that's another experience that's different. You're playing in an away ground in a high pressure environment, away from home. You've also got the final, of course, where 67,000 fans turned up. That's essentially as close as you can get to a first team environment. You had the number of months that he trained with the first team. You've got the squad selections where he's on the bench, not playing, but going with the first team, being part of the changing room, soaking in the atmosphere of the stadiums. You've got the camp that he went on during the World Cup, so the games in Spain. So all of these things add up and help make the player mentally ready for that debut when they eventually make it, right? So just referencing it back to Thwaites, the point I'm trying to make here is that whilst players at under 18s level can have exceptional games and really, really good seasons, it's just bearing in mind that, of course, it's a different level to the first team, and there are a lot of things that those players need to go through before they can make that jump, rather than it just being a case of, oh, well, they're playing very good at under 18s football, so yeah, just chuck them in. They're better than the first team players, because it's not like that. It just isn't like that. Going back to the game and the result, so it leaves us top of the league, 7 games played, 7 wins, 32 goals scored and 4 conceded. Derby in second, City in third. For us to win the league again, I think we're going to have to go on a good run, a real good run, because Derby look really strong, as do City, particularly in the last 5 games. Their squad is equally as talented as ours, and they've got a lot of players that can win them games. Next weekend, we've got Leeds away. Leeds are currently sitting bottom of the league with 0 wins, so I don't want to jinx it, but you'd imagine that's another 3 points. Obviously, anything can happen, but with the way we're playing at the moment, I can't see that being anything but 3 points. So we're going to leave it there for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed recording this, and I want to get better at it as time goes on. And of course, today was exclusively under 18s. I'd like this to become 21s, under 19s, all this sort of thing, right? And not just talking about the game specifically, player performances, transfer news, all this sort of stuff, right, that's related to the academy. I'd like to start doing more videos on them. So if you've enjoyed it, leave a comment, drop a like, and see you soon.